kitchen floor video. Just hanging out to see if I can hear the baby in case he wakes up. So yesterday I was listening to NPR, and I think I listen to them anymore. I used to really like them. I used to donate money to them on a semi-regular basis, and I really enjoyed their content. And then I got older and I started kind of changing my mind on some things, and now I realize how terribly biased they are, but I still listen to them occasionally just because it's interesting to hear the kinds of stuff that they're passing off as information or news anymore. So one of the things that I heard yesterday, they had someone come on who was talking about how they found a body of a 9,000-year-old maybe woman hunter that was discovered in a field that wasn't in very good shape, but that this body had a whole bunch of hunting artifacts. So the headline was something along the lines of debunking the myth that women were never hunters during the hunter-gatherer time period. And so they had this fellow come on, and he was talking about how oftentimes there was this stereotype, and that it was based in the idea that women had reproductive responsibilities that kept them from being able to be hunters. And I am not making this video to say that there were no female hunters during hunter-gatherer time periods. I'm sure that there were amazing hunters that were women during hunter-gatherer time periods. However, I do not think that there were very many of them, and I think that the thing that pissed me off the most about this interview was it felt to me as though they were trying to push kind of a modern narrative that women can do everything that men can do, and that women taking care of children is not an amazing task, and not something that needs to be discussed anymore or upheld in society as something that is impressive in any way, shape, or form. It's much more impressive to go out and hunt mammoths. And I'm not trying to belittle men in the sense that I do think it is amazing to go hunt mammoths, and I think it's equally amazing to raise children successfully, especially during a time period when we didn't have the modern conveniences that we do now. Infant mortality and maternal mortality were very high. Probably depending on where you were, and the numbers are a little bit conflicting on that. But so basically what he says was that it wasn't a good excuse that women were not hunters because of reproductive responsibilities, because after giving birth, and I quote, they could simply give the baby off to the grandparents. Problem solved. Head out on your 3-day hunt. All is well. I think my issue with that is, especially when you're talking about infants, what are they going to feed an infant? We're not talking about modern times when you had options for formula, or you could get breast milk from breast milk bank. I mean, you could have a wet nurse. That is an option. I mean, there are many stories of women who weren't able to produce enough milk during tribal times that had other women, help them out. But I think that was the first thing that seems pretty ridiculous. Like, you can't feed infants, whatever. Like, breast milk was the only option during that time period. I mean, later on you had domesticated animals that you could get milk from, and that was an option, but it was not pasteurized, so infant mortality rate would go up. Next, I think it definitely discounts how big of a thing birth is. I know for me personally, it took probably 3 months after having a baby until I felt like I could go on a decent hike, which would be required, obviously, for hunting, let alone much more strenuous activity than that. It was probably 6 months until my joints and my hormones got all back in order, so that I would feel like I could comfortably, pack a heavy weight or go on a trip where I had high exposure. I think I wrote in my journal, it was 8 months until I got to the point where my reflexes were back to what they were before pregnancy. So, and you would need, obviously, if you're taking down a mammoth, that is life or death. You would need to be at your peak when it comes to reflexes. I think it's important to remember also that there are physical differences that are fairly obvious between men and women that would make it more difficult for a woman, on average, to go ahead and take down a mammoth with a group of other people. But I'm sure that there were women that were extremely strong during that time period where that wouldn't be nearly as much of an issue. However, when you're talking about the value of a woman versus the value of a man in a tribal society, and this is something that's kind of carried on into modern society, the value of a woman as a mother and a child bearer was a lot higher than the value of a man. And for this reason, women were not generally going to be taken along during really dangerous activities, because unfortunately, you only need a couple of men in a tribe in order for that tribe to go ahead and procreate and go on hunky-dory, A-okay, but you're going to need quite a few women. You're going to need to have a healthy population of childbearing women, or else y'all are just going to die off. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is that there were just different priorities in taking care of people of different sexes during that time period. So I guess take that how you want. Trying to think if there was anything else that really bugged me about it. It just seems really terribly flippant about the idea that that women being around to take care of their children was not important, and that they would be better off serving their tribal group by going out and hunting instead. I think that really denigrates what women have spent their lives doing for the last couple 100,000 years, which is taking care of their families under really harsh conditions when it comes to childcare. So this is another thumbs down for NPR. This one actually pissed me off enough that I woke up in the middle of the night last night. I was just like, So that's my thoughts on that. If anyone from NPR is listening, I hope you take notes.